The Finnish Civil War, a very small part of the Russian Civil War, but had some really big implications as Finland was rich with materials. It was also extremely ethnically different. The Tsar would attempt to fix this problem with Russification, but it was too late, as when the Civil War came, every single other ethnicity was done with the crap. The fall of the Russian Empire would first happen ethnically, with several groups seceding. Then those ethnic separatists would fall into three categories: either fighting for the whites, fighting against the reds, or fighting for full-on independence. But since Finland is no normal country, it would fight for independence as a German puppet state against the socialist Finns, with the Germans helping by taking the capital from the socialists and majority support of the country. The socialists were defeated and Finland would become part of the German Empire for like 5 seconds, because the Treaty of Versailles said that was illegal, and the Finnish would form a new republic with no German princes. But what if the socialists had won and joined the Soviet Union? Well, a good way to have this happen is to give the socialists more support in Finland, have the Germans decide that helping Finland would only waste resources for the Great War. This causes the socialists in Finland to take over, and when the Reds take over Russia, Finland would be added to the Soviet Union as a Finnish SSR. The Soviet Union's history would be going about the same, gulags and all. Stalin may attempt another Russification with, Finland resisting, causing more gulags and secret police there, which actually might cause a small little winter war between rebels and the Soviet forces for a while, but eventually that would all be put down by the Red Army. But it would all come down to World War II. During the invasion of Russia, there would be another offensive into Finland through Norway. This would cause an occupation of a very important port for the Soviets, but it would also spare Leningrad the siege it faced in our timeline. The Germans might even try to do what they did with Yugoslavia and push for the Finns to gain independence from Russia as a German puppet state. Wait, where have I heard that before? The conservative Finns would most likely be used in the Wehrmacht against the Soviet Union, while some Finns who still had socialist sympathy would most likely employ ski warfare onto the Wehrmacht. The Soviets would still launch a winter offensive that would be way more successful in Finland, since Finland is mostly snow, which may cause the Germans to be on full-on retreat in Finland and decide they need to hold defensive positions in Norway to send more men to the main front, since, the main front's falling apart right now. After the Battle of Stalingrad, the Soviets would launch total war on the Germans by pushing in on all fronts, including Norway. By the time the Soviets would reach Warsaw, the defenses in Norway would begin to collapse. Hitler would call onto the Germans in Norway to retreat, in order to defend Berlin, which was currently being bombed to high hell right now. After the war, the Finnish and Ukrainians would be punished severely for sympathizing with the Wehrmacht, even the ones that really weren't. And, then after the death of Stalin, there'd be protests and uprisings like there was in our timeline, but would most likely fail, just like they did in our timeline. But Scandinavia would be another story. With the mountainous terrain in Norway and the vast forests and snow in Finland, it would not be easily put down. Think of the troubles, but instead of potato car bombs and random street fights, it would be snow warfare and snipers everywhere. It's like a guerrilla force, but instead of a jungle, it's fighting in snow and mountains. Politics would go mostly the same, with the U.S. sending Sweden supplies to give to the freedom fighters in Scandinavia, hoping to liberate from communist control. This would start, hurting the Soviet Union a lot, as not only was its military in strain, its economy was falling apart as well. And after the Prague Uprising, with Czechoslovakia deciding to leave the Warsaw Pact, the other armies would begin to wonder, hey, what are we even fighting for? And some would decide mutiny is the best idea right now. This would cause a full-on civil war between the Reds and the Army, as the Army decided that they didn't want to fight anymore for the Reds, and the Red Army would decide to go in there. Military bases in East Germany and Norway would be completely under siege as they were cut off from Soviet control. Eventually, they'd be pushed back onto, while the Red Army would try and push into Poland and Romania, with them putting up stiff resistance. Of course, they would still get pushed back a little, but it was very likely that they couldn't really last any longer, as the freedom fighters in Scandinavia and in Estonia and the Baltic states were really wearing down their army. That's when they began to realize that this war was too big for them, and they knew that the world was turning on them, especially their Eastern Bloc. After East Germany and Norway would fall, the Soviet Union would most likely decide the best way to deal with this whole situation is just to let them be so then they could actually deal with Finland. This would be a horrible idea as Finland, was still friends with the Eastern Bloc, since the Eastern Bloc looked up to Finland. And eventually, the Soviet Union would see where the waves of the war is going and realize that they're completely outnumbered. They could keep fighting, but there would only be more fighting and more resistance. So, they would decide the best way to go along with this is to, obviously, just free the Eastern Bloc. The whole idea of releasing the Eastern Bloc would be that they can deal with their own problems and maybe, stop resistance in their own country. Of course, no, that's not how it works, and eventually the Soviet Union would collapse. That's going to be all for the scenario today. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more of my content, hit the subscribe button. Comment below how you think the scenario would differ, or what you think would happen, or if you disagree with me on something. I always like, conversations. Anyways, guys, that's going to be all for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Oh,